Joyride! Joyride! This is so dangerous.
The original.
Oh, that's fun. I love giving away stuff and being nice.
It's funny how, like, spreading joy gives you joy, right?
Spreading joy gives you joy.
Yeah.
It's true. It's good. Can we just do this full time? Just go around doing, like, nice things for people?
Woo! Let's go downtown and see if we can spread some joy there.
Oh, there's some construction workers. Should we get some Gatorades?
You want to?
Let's do it.
How many? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, let's go spread some joy, huh? Hey, guys. Just spreading some joy in the city today.
We got some Gatorades for
Gatorades
y'all.
on us,
They're
guys.
nice and
Here you
cold.
go. Here you go. You guys are working so hard. Here you go.
Come on
Oh,
in,
yeah,
grab
yeah.
some Gatorade.
There you go. Got one?
There you go.
There you go, guys.
We're just riding around in our joy bug, spreading
Yeah,
some joy
that's
today.
right.
So, all right, have a good day, guys.
Great day.
Who knew spreading joy could be so much fun? No, James Street.
Oh, we'll just check here.
No, this is the bus station, isn't it?
What? No. Have you never driven outside of your street?
Hey, it's supposed to be nice to me, Nate.
Sorry. Just chuck it at this guy?
Oh my God. Hey, you want a Gatorade?
Sweet deal, man.
Whoa. There you go.
Have a good one.
Nice
Nice
catch.
catch, bro.
We should help people with their groceries and like put their carts back for them.
I'm a star in the spotlight, legend by birthright. I know how to get what's mine.
Hello, ma'am. How are you today? Oh, yeah, we're just trying to spread some joy throughout the city. You want us to put your cart away for you? Got everything? Awesome. Have a great day.
Yeah, would you like it? There you go, sir.
There you go. Can I grab your cart? Awesome. Thank you, guys. Double cart!
Oh, she needs help with her shoe. I'm gonna help her. Tie your shoe for you, man? I'll just get a nice tie knot. There you go. Now you're good to go. You're welcome.
How you doing, sir? We're just helping people out. I'll take your cart after you're done, just to help you out there. Yeah, no problem. Got everything? Yeah. Wonderful. Have a great day. We're just spreading some joy today in the city. Would your child like a balloon? Yay! Which color? Which color do you want? Blue? Here you go. Here you go. Thank you. Have a great day. Where's Johnny?
Yeah, no worries. Spreading some joy today. Have a good day.
Let's give it up for Johnny GP. Wow, those guys need a day job. That's great. How's everybody feeling? You glad to be here today? Good. Excellent. We are in a series on joy, and we are started last week, and are going to be spending the rest of the month really on a bit of a joyride, looking for where do we find our joy. And the reality is we live in a world that has more than we've ever dreamed of, and we're more miserable than we've ever been, all right? And so we're gonna unpack that a little bit today. We're gonna talk about it. But I figured, if it's all right with you, can we start with a bit of fun today? I figured, is that okay with you? Okay. Here's my philosophy: is if you can't have fun in church, then we're doing it wrong. This is where it should happen. Okay. So I want to show you this quick little video, and this has very little to do with what we're talking about today, but it may spark some joy. Okay. So if you feel dead on the inside, this is to help you, okay? If you're that person, I will not smile. We're going to just work that out in you, okay? So when you check out this video, check it out. There you go. How many needed that today? You need a good little laugh? All right. Yeah, we all need that person in our life. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Real quick, we're going to put up a few things on the screen. And if these are things that spark joy in your life, these are things that bring happiness to you or would, I want you just to kind of count off on your fingers how many of these things you think would add some joy to your life, okay? So we're going to start. Here we go. Things that will make you happy, okay? So, number one, a relationship. For some of you, you'll take anything at this point, just one, okay? More flexibility at work, a new job with better pay, an extra bedroom, a more attentive life partner, nudge, nudge, a baby, maybe that would stress you out, I don't know. Looking younger, losing 10 pounds, seeing your kids excel at life. Pain relief, knowing what to do with your life, which is a great thing. Cure from chronic illness or disability. More money, a glass of wine, and a long vacation. Okay. All right, so how many of you scored 3 of those things? You're like, yep, that would bring some joy into my life. 3 or more? Be loud and proud. Okay, there we go. How about 5? You got 5 of them? 7? Any of you? All of them? Wow. The baby part too. Okay, how many? All of them minus the baby. Okay, anyways. That's great. Well, here's what's interesting is I was just thinking about today, I was doing some reading. It's fascinating. There's been some research done in the University of California around this idea of circumstantial joy. We started talking about it last week, but this idea that even if you had everything that you wanted in life, all the relationships, all the money, all the Teslas, all the phone, all the circumstances going your way, health, all of that stuff, it would still only account for what science has shown, and through studies and research has shown that it would still only account for 10% of your joy. 10%. That if you were to add all of it up, we could still only predict 10% of your joy. The 90%, the other 90% is simply based on what you choose to focus on. And so today we're going to talk about that. What is it that you focus on in your life? What is it that you choose to see? And over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about it. In fact, next week we're going to talk about junk in your trunk. All right? Look at your neighbor, say, I got some junk in my trunk. Don't do that. That's weird. Don't do that. Nah, don't do it. We're going to talk about junk in your trunk, and we're really, the bigger convo is for a lot of us, we spend a lot of time focused on this little rear view mirror of our past successes, our past failures, and yet we have this whole entire literal window of opportunity in front of us that we ignore. So we're going to talk about that. Where's your focus? And then week 4, we're going to talk about traffic jams. That a lot of us, we focus on the immediate, and yet what I've come to learn in my own life is the things that probably bring the most immediate joy, gratification in my life are actually the things that probably lead me to the least amount of joy on the long haul. So we're going to talk about that, the long game. And today we're going to talk about backseat drivers, because every family has one. Okay, how many of you have one in your life? You have somebody in your life who is a backseat driver. How many of you are married to one? Okay, I like this. Not very confident in saying it out loud, which is smart. Okay, what's interesting is my wife and I, we've been married 15 years. We're coming up on 15 years this summer. And, yep, thank you. And my wife is actually a great driver, but she's a phenomenal backseat driver, okay? And she's so good at backseat driving that I would actually say she's graduated to what I would call a navigational specialist, okay? And so she's so good at this that she actually doesn't have to use words anymore. She just points. And she just uses her finger as she's sitting there. She just points. And I know what she means by those little maneuvers. It just means, are you an idiot? And why are you staying in this lane? Because clearly the better lane is over there, okay? And so I can read in between the lines. I know exactly what she's talking about. She not only does that, she also will glance into that mirror several times to go, which also means, seriously, there's nobody behind you. There's nobody beside you. Get into the other lane, okay? So does anybody else resonate? You feel my pain on this one? Okay, some of you you're keeping your mouth shut. That's smart. Okay, so we're going to talk about this as it relates to joy. Because here's what I've come to learn in life, is when it comes to joy, there's a lot of advice being thrown around when it comes to where you should find it. So today I want to ask the question is, where do you find your joy, and whose voice do you listen to? Whose voice do you listen to? And I want to encourage you today to consider something that maybe you've never considered. I want to give you 3 things that I want you to consider as we sort of talk about this conversation today. Because here's the reality. The truth is, for so many of us, we don't often think about where our joy comes from. And so as a result, we find ourselves doing the things we've always done, thinking that we're going to get the same results. But today I want to talk about, there's a few things that you can consider as it relates to your joy. And the first one is this. You already heard, you already see it, is to consider the source. Consider the source. Now, think about this for a moment. When was the last time that you thought about where your joy comes from? Like, have you really ever taken stock to go, yep, here's the things that bring joy in my life, and I need to do more of those, I need to do less. The truth is, we don't really do that very often. In fact, a lot of us, we spend our time with this little friend of ours, and what's interesting about it is there's a slot machine effect that happens with this thing where literally I think if I will do this down swipe maneuver, which is to refresh my social media, to refresh my email, to refresh my webpage, whatever it is, that I begin to associate in my mind that this is going to bring me joy, right? And so we begin often to fall in these patterns where we think, well, if I just spend 15 more minutes doing this, that maybe there'll be a picture, maybe there'll be a tweet, maybe there'll be a direct message, maybe there'll be something that comes up that will really spark joy in my life. If I just do it for 15 more minutes, maybe 30, and 6 hours later, we're not happy, are we? We're miserable. We're actually more miserable than we were when we started. And so here's what we have to understand is you need to consider the source of your joy. You need to take an audit of it. This is the first step when it comes to considering these steps towards joy. Now here's what's interesting is our culture has some of the loudest voices when it comes to telling us where to find our joy from. And one of the loudest cultural things I think we've been sold, and we've probably in a lot of ways bought into the church as well, is this, is that self-care is more important than others. And if self-care over others, if I spend more time on myself, that I will experience joy. How many know this? This is what you're sold every day, right? If you just buy one more thing on Amazon, you'll be happy, right? And is it really working for us? The truth is we know it's really not. And the math sounds good. The math sounds right. It's like, yeah, okay, if I focus on myself, there'll be more of me that I could give away. And yet, for many of us, we find ourselves in a place where we've binged on Netflix again, and it didn't actually make us feel better. So, what do you do when it doesn't work? I was meeting with a great friend of mine a couple weeks ago. We were just chatting about this, and he said, "Justin, like I'm building my business, and I'm posting all this stuff on social media over the last couple of years, self-promotion." And he's like, I've come to a point where I'm like, what's the point? What's the point? It feels empty. I'm just posting about myself. And it was a great observation because as we began talking, it was like, yeah, there's these things that we don't often take stock of, that we believe give us joy that don't. And what's interesting is even as I was reading this week, I was reminded of this, that there's actually a psychology behind this, that you're not being sold joy, you're being sold a product. You're being sold ads. You're being sold a way to keep you there, right? So every time that you refresh, every time that you're on this thing, it's actually designed to keep you on the platform. It's not designed to give you joy. So how do they do that? Well, they do that with outrage and anger. And so this week, even on my feed, it was all kinds of people posting about boycotting Amber Alerts for lost children because they wanted privacy on their phones, and so people were like losing their minds. Some saying I want privacy, and some saying I want to help lost children, and other people being mortified at the other groups. And so what's interesting is it sucked me in. I was reading about it. I was like, yeah, that's awful, and yeah, that's terrible, and we all do it. We all do it. And so culture's opinion is that self-care over others brings joy. So we have to take stock of that. There's another opinion that culture has on us, is the second one, is that others over self equals joy. And so maybe if you're around and you've maybe self-actualized a little bit and you realize, yeah, you know what, maybe time on myself isn't all it's chalked up to be. And if I spend time on others, I'll be happier, until you find yourself in a place where you're burnt out and you have nothing left to give, and you tried to be the perfect spouse, and you tried to be the perfect parent, and you tried to be everything your boss needed, and you tried to be a friend and be there for every single time that they needed someone, and you were there whenever they called, and you helped every time they asked, and all you did was give, and you find yourself burnt out. This is the other side. So we have these two kinds of things where maybe you've been in this place where you actually are here today, or you're watching online, and you're like, yeah, you know what, I tried to care about myself, and I feel really numb, I feel empty. Or maybe you're on this side, you say, I give my life to everyone else but myself, and I feel like I'm burnt out. And then you think, oh, well, maybe the key is to actually find a perfect balance. If I could balance myself and others, and if I could just find the perfect solution, the perfect formula for myself and others' time, I'll be happy. And none of us are. None of us are. Right? Can you resonate with that? That's the reality for so many of us. We're in the cycle of running on empty. So what do you do with that? I want to give you some good advice on joy, okay? And this is some advice that you already know, but there's maybe a chance that you've forgotten about it, okay? And so here's what I've come to learn about joy. This is it. Joy is more about who than about what. Right? Joy, let me say that again. Joy is more about the who than the what. And we know this intuitively. Like, you remember when you were a grade school student, you were in kindergarten, and as long as you had your who, you were good. It didn't matter what you were wearing, really. It didn't really matter what you had in your backpack. Just as long as you had your who, right? I had my youngest son, River. We were at these day camps this week, and every day I dropped him off. He made me wait because he had to wait for his friend Brian, and once Brian was there, then we were good. I could leave, but I had to wait till Brian came, and then I could go. And the truth is, that's all of us. As we grow up in our life, it's like, as long as I have my who, I'm good, into junior high, into high school, into college, into, that's why we get married. We think if I just had a who, then I would be good. And because if it was solved by the what, we would just go out and buy it, right? We'd just go buy it if it was solved by the what. But we all know that it's not just the what, it's the what becomes what else and what else. And at the end of our life, here's what I've come to learn from observation and from talking to people who have gone through some life, is that rarely are regrets about possessions. They're often about relationships. They're about the who. I sat down with my grandma a few years ago, and I said, Grandma, and again, I'm always intrigued by how can I learn from other people's lives so that I don't have to make the same mistakes, just because I think life is short. And so I asked her, I said, if you could repeat life, if you could go over again and do it, what would you do different? And she thought for a moment, and she's like, I'm not sure. And so our conversation went on, and then she came back a few moments later. She said, okay, she's like, I have an answer for you. I think I would focus less on building our farm. And again, we grew up in a farming community, a farm in Manitoba. And she said, I think we'd focus less on, trying to build our farm and trying to create moments with our kids instead. And so I took stock of that, and I remembered my own childhood with my own dad that, I don't remember. How many of you remember, the gifts you got growing up? Unless you're a massive gifts person. I mean, think about it. We remember very little of those kinds of things. But I'll never forget the moments, right? I'll never forget that one trip that we took together that was just me and my dad to Sri Lanka, and we helped people. And man, that was a pivotal moment for me. So we have this thing over our mantle that says, memories over things. Because we just believe, inside of us is this belief that it's about the who, it's not about the what. And we all know that. But you got to consider the source, because we have this drift to believe the things that are immediate will make us happy. And so here's Paul. We've been in this book called Philippians. And if you don't know who Paul is, if you're just joining in on the series, Paul is this individual who's a leader of the churches. He's built really, in a lot of ways, the church as we've known it today. It was founded on the backs of Paul and the people that he worked with. And so he's in prison as a result of this. He's in chains. He's anticipating his death. And he writes the most joyful book. And this is where we get these 4 chapters. And so Philippians chapter 2, if you have a Bible, you can turn with me or follow along the screen. If you have an app as well, you can pick up the YouVersion Bible app, and you can track with us as well. Here's what it says in Philippians 2, verse 1. It says, look at how much encouragement, another word for encouragement is joy. Look at how much joy that you found in your relationship with the Anointed One. You're filled to overflowing with his comforting love. You've experienced a deepening friendship with the Holy Spirit, and you felt his tender affection and mercy. And so I'm asking you, my friends, that you be joined together in perfect unity, with one heart, one passion, and united in one love. Walk together with one harmonious purpose, and you will fill my heart with unbounded joy. Okay, so unbounded joy. So we're beginning to see here what sounds like a prescription for joy, that there is something to be said about the yous in your life, not the whats, the yous. Unbounded joy starts with the who. So if you look at the amount of times that he begins to say relationships and friendships and join together, it's all about the who. So I know here, if you're like me, I'm a skeptic, naturally, a little bit. I think of your voice immediately rolling around in my mind. You say, Justin, I like to be by myself. That's where I find my joy. I don't find it with the who's. I find it by myself. And to which I would push back gently to say this. I think there's two camps when it comes to that statement. Number one is you've been surrounded by so much support and love and joy and comfort that you don't really actually have a good understanding of what it means to feel really isolated from anyone. That's one group. And then the other group, I think if you're really honest, is that when we can't get what we want, we just say we don't need it. We say, I don't really want it anyway. Right? That's a defense mechanism. We say, well, I didn't need any friends anyway. And that's how my voice sounds in my head, just so you know. I don't really want, I like being by myself. Those are the kinds of things we tell ourselves because we don't want to have to deal with the hard work of actually working through this. And so we have in the story of Paul, he paints this picture, but we also have another part in the Bible where we're reminded of this same thing. There's a lawyer who comes up to Jesus. And he's a bit of a skeptic. He's what they call a Pharisee. He's trying to trip Jesus up. And he's this lawyer who really, in a lot of ways, he lives by the laws, okay? He has this in his mind already made up that there's over 600 laws that are written in the writings that have come before Jesus. And he's thinking, Jesus, I'm going to ask him what's the most important. I'm going to trip him up on this. And so in his mind, he's thinking he's going to say something like, thou shalt not, don't do this, stop doing that. It's going to be something like that. And this is what he's thinking, I'm imagining in his mind. And so here's what we read, Matthew chapter 22, verse 36. It says this. He says, teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Okay, and again, you get what he's kind of getting at. He's thinking, he's going to give me a good law here. And Jesus answers him, and he says, love. The first word, love. And I can just imagine the cogs rolling in this lawyer's mind. No, Jesus, sorry. What I meant was like the command, like stop doing, or like make sure you don't, or whatever you do, don't do this. And Jesus, he just keeps going. Love the Lord your God. And I can just imagine him wanting to stop him again and say, no, sorry, I feel like you've misunderstood me. What I meant was I need what's the law? 600 of them. What's the best one? What's the law for what you should do and what you shouldn't do? And Jesus says, I hear you. Let me tell you, love the Lord your God with every passion of your heart, with all the energy of your being, and with every thought that is within you, for this is the great and supreme commandment. Now, just pause there for a second. I don't know if you're like me. Growing up in church, there was a belief that I think a lot of us had. Most of us grew up believing that God was actually in the way of happiness. It was because of things like commands that we couldn't be happy. Right? This is kind of the idea that when we grow up that it was sort of an either-or proposition, that you could be a good Christian or you could be happy. That was your options, right? You could be a good Catholic or you could be happy. You could be a good Jew or be happy. You could be a good Hindu or you could be happy. You could be a good person or be happy. There was sort of an either-or proposition. There was no sort of combining of this. This was sort of the idea. And here's what I've come to learn about us as humans. That we won't stay very long on a path if it doesn't lead towards joy, right? We just won't. It's just our nature. If it doesn't actually lead to us being happy, there's only a certain, unless there's a really, really, really good reason, we will not stay on that path. But today, I just wonder this. I wonder if we mistook the what's of the Bible for the who. If we settled for a list of what's and do's and don'ts instead of realizing that Jesus says, actually, hey, there's a prescription here. There's something worth considering that maybe you haven't thought of before. It actually was never about the what. It was always about who. That if you want to have joy, you have to consider the source of your joy. And it's not in a what. It's not in a command. It's not in a list. It's not in being religious. It's not in just going to church every week. It's not in doing the right things. It's in a person. It's in a who. And so what if God is not in the way of your joy, but actually provides a way to it? Would that be worth considering? I think it would be. I think it would be based on the fact that for many of us, we haven't found what we're looking for. So it is worth considering. And so Jesus, he goes on and he says this in verse 39, and he says, and the second part of this command is like it in importance. So here's what's interesting. He's like, these things are paired together. You can't separate these. This is one command. It's two parts, but you cannot separate them. And then he goes on and he says, you must love your friend in the same way that you love yourself. For contained within these commandments to love, you will find all the meaning of the law and the prophets. You will find the meaning of life. You will find joy, right? So it sounds like Jesus, you're actually offering a prescription for joy, to which Jesus says, I am. This is the path. So what do we have so far? We have these three characteristics to joy. There's these three components. We have God, we have others, and we have self. God might be the one, if you're new to Christ following, that you might be skeptical of, but these ones you've been dealing with, the rest of them, if you're new to faith, you've been dealing with these your whole life, self and others. I want to introduce the God component to this, because here's, in this equation, there's something that I've noticed about people who have joy, and maybe you've noticed this as well. There seems to be this thing about people that you meet, that you look up to, that you admire, that you want to be like, that they seem to have a peace about them. They seem to have a calm. They seem to be really comfortable when it comes to themselves. Okay, so of these three parts to this equation, when it comes to their self, they're the kinds of people that they're just comfortable in their own skin. Don't you love those kinds of people? They have no qualms about them. They're just good with who they are, right? We love that. They have this kind of joy that's just evident in their comfort with themselves. They also have this comfort with others, that it doesn't matter if somebody's a bigwig in the room or somebody has hurt them even. They're just okay with who they are around others. They're okay with others. But then there's this part that is unique to Christ followers, that other people who have experienced joy, they also have this comfort with God, that they know they're not perfect. They know they're far from it. I think that's part of the appeal to what we do as a family, that there's a lot of people here who recognize that they're not perfect, they're far from it. In fact, all of us are fallen short of that perfect standard. But we're also not going to beat ourselves up that we're terrible, that we're awful, because we're on a trajectory where we're saying we're not okay to stay here. We're going to keep going, but we're also not going to just feel terrible about it. We're going to keep moving towards it. This is this comfort with God. We're not perfect, but we're better every day. We're helping one another grow. And so this is the sort of formula being shaped here. And here's the challenge for us, is even after we've considered the source of our joy, you also have to consider your priority. Okay, and this is where we kind of get hung up a little bit. This is where joy gets stifled, and you're going to resonate with me here in a second. But this is where a lot of us, we run into trouble, okay? And here's the problem in priorities, is in Philippians 2, keep going, verse 3, it says this. It says, Paul, he's saying, be free from pride-filled opinions, for they will only harm your cherished unity. Don't allow self-promotion to hide in your hearts, but in authentic humility, put others first, and view others as more important than yourselves. Abandon every display of selfishness. Possess a greater concern for what matters to others instead of your own interests. And consider the example that Jesus, the Anointed One, has set before us. Let his mindset become your motivation. And so I got thinking, the problem for us is an issue of selfishness. The problem for us is an issue of self. And here's what I would describe this as. Every one of us has a version of what the Bible calls sin. Even if you don't follow God, you have things that you believe that others shouldn't do, right? You have things that, if you think of the most important people to you, even your sister or your daughter or whatever, you think there's things that others should never do to them, those things you would call sin. What's interesting about those things often is we want things that other people should never do that we often find ourselves doing. And this is the challenge for us, is this priority of self. You think of a problem in your life, it usually boils down to somebody believed that their self was more important than you, right? You think of your relationship problems. Somebody believed that what they valued or what they were talking about was more important than your problems or more important than your value. You think of economic problems. They happen because somebody believed that their value was more important than somebody else. Political problems. Somebody believed that what I value is more important than you. Hunger problems, peace problems, literally every problem boils. This is what the Bible describes sin as. Anytime I elevate myself over others, over the who's, that is when I run into a joy problem. And so if you want to actually begin to reclaim your joy, you have to consider your priorities. I want to give you a few options here, okay? So these are just a few things you can consider. So you can set your priorities, and here's what will happen. The first one is if you choose yourself as the highest, again, God's given you this choice to choose this. If you choose self over others, here's my guess for you, because I feel it right now, is that you're going to feel joy stagnation. You're going to feel empty. Maybe there's a good chance that you're even here, and the reality is you feel numb inside. You do. If you're really honest, you feel empty. You feel like you have all the right things going for you. All the circumstances are right. Things are on the upswing at work. All the relationships, like all of the stuff seems right, could even feel right, and yet you could still feel this joy stagnation. This is when we elevate ourselves over others, because joy was always designed to be used in the context of the who's, right, with others. Then there's another option that you can choose as well, a priority, which is others over self. And you'll find yourself like many with a joy deficit. You'll find yourself burned out, feeling like, man, I'm empty. Like all I do is give all day to my kids. All I do is give all day to my spouse. All I do is give all day in my work. I'm just burned out. And you find yourself struggling to find joy in the middle of what seems like the best life you should have. The sun is shining. It's a July Sunday. It's beautiful out. And all you can think is, I'm miserable. What the heck is wrong with me? Right? Have you been there? If you've been there, you know exactly that feeling, joy deficit. But here's what's kind of unique. And this is the thing that the Bible offers that is different than anybody else. It's this formula that's not easily marketable because it actually requires putting in some work. It's not easy to sell. But it is a path that is a formula that we're invited to uniquely as Christ followers. And here's the formula. It looks like this. God over others, over self, equals abundant joy. God over others, over self, equals abundant joy. And this is awesome because if you're struggling to find joy, you might not have a joy problem. You might have a priority problem. That actually starts with loving God, loving others, and then you love yourself. And as you go through this cycle, that there's actually an abundance of joy that is possible for you. And so if I could be just transparent for a moment, the last couple weeks, I've been like in a fog of frustration in my own, internally. Again, everything on the, outside looks fine. I'm a normal person. Well, not normal, but I do normal things and you wouldn't notice anything. But inside, I've been just navigating with my close friends like I'm miserable. What the heck is wrong with me? And realizing even in this own process for myself that it's great you serve others, but if you don't have your priorities right, you begin to burn out, and so then you serve yourself. And guess what? Another purchase on Amazon isn't fixing it. Another Netflix binge isn't fixing it. A new shiny phone that felt novel last September is going to feel novel for a few moments this September, but then it goes away. So for me, it's this realization that, I actually had a deficit. I thought self was the answer, and as a result, I'm finding myself with this stagnant joy. So there's something in us that we go, actually, there's something that we need to reclaim. There's a priority thing. So you need to consider the source of your joy, but you also need to consider the priorities, because if you get these mixed up, you actually begin to, you frustrate yourself. You find yourself in a place where you don't want to be. You find yourself in a deficit, or you find yourself in a place where you're stagnated in your joy. So Paul goes on, he says, okay, I want to give you some tools on how to work this out. And here's what he says. Philippians 2, verse 12. He says, here's how you navigate this. Work hard. He says, work hard. And he goes on, and he's on to say this. Work hard to show the results of your salvation. This is another translation says to work out your salvation. Obeying God with deep reverence and fear, for God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him. So within this is this notion that, let me just speak to this word for a second. So the Bible uses this word sometimes, salvation. And this is this idea that God wants to do a work in you to actually help you see who you are, who God has made you to be, to actually transform you from the inside out, that only he could do. But then there's also this other part where it says you're designed to work this out. That means to carry it out into completion. That you actually that joy is actually not a destination, it's a journey. That this cycle for you is going to happen your entire life. That you think, well, maybe you're here and the honest truth is you beat yourself up because you say, man, I have every reason to be joyful. Like I do all the things that I should do even as a Christ follower, and I still, listen, the reason that you feel the way that you feel is because we never arrive. There are markers to help you go, I need to realign myself because my drift and your drift is towards me. Your drift is towards you. We have this drift towards myself, and that's the place of death. It's a place of joy being stagnated. And Paul says, listen, there's something to do with putting in the work that's powerful. There's an initial decision, but then you have to put in the work. And he says there's a choice that you have to choose this every single day. You have to choose it. He goes on and he says, do everything without grumbling or complaining. Why does he say that? Because it's a choice. It's not just something you wake up with. Right? There's sometimes this notion that people that are joyful, they just were born this way. I would argue that maybe there are some, but I wasn't born that way. I naturally drift to not being joyful, and I have to choose it every single day. You see the highlight reels I have people often talk to our family, oh, you guys look so happy, and we are, but we're also, just like you, we drift to self, and we find ourselves in the inner place, in the deep place. Sometimes we feel miserable too. So in this story, Paul is saying, listen, you have to choose this. You have to choose it every single day. And so if you're here today and maybe your reality is you've tried everything to be joyful and you just simply don't know how, I want to encourage you to consider not only the source of your joy, not only to consider the priorities that you have aligned in your life, but also to consider putting in the work. Consider the work. That there might be actually something that you need to pursue. And maybe for you, putting in the work means I'm going to come back next week because honestly, I really need to figure this out. I'm miserable. I don't know. I've been trying to find this everywhere. I don't know where to find it. This thing that they were singing about today, the feeling that I had, I want more of that. I need to understand that. Maybe for you, it's a conversation. Maybe it's you putting in the work is saying, I'm going to talk to somebody about this. Because maybe it's you actually going to the Blue Wall Central Connect and saying, I'm not happy. maybe that's your leading line. I give you permission to make that your leading line. I'm not happy. And somebody will legit talk to you. So it starts with putting in the work. If you don't know how to find it, it might mean that you need to do something that you've never done before. So maybe for you that means considering doing something you've never done before as well. Consider God. Consider that he might want to transform something in you and he might want to work out something in you. And then I also realize there's others of you that the reality is you've forgotten where your joy comes from. You've forgotten. And maybe for you, you feel shame for that, or I don't know what you feel as a result of that, but I want to challenge you today that there is a way to joy. And that if you would consider actually beginning to put in the work, that there might be something again that you could reclaim in your life. You don't have to be miserable. Here's what I believe about God, is that God is a God of abundance. He's not a scarcity God. So the more that you actually connect to him, the more that there's abundant joy available for you to give, in order that you can be good, in order that you can go back and you can receive more from God, in order that you can give it away. There's this abundance that you don't actually have to live in a deficit. You don't have to live stagnant, that you can actually believe for something better. And so I was reading actually this great book. And this was just super good for me this last couple of weeks, a book called Atomic Habits. And it talks about this idea that if you want to change something in your life, one of the easiest ways to do that is to stack a new habit onto another one. So if you have something that you want to do, think about what's something that you do every single day already and stack it on top of that. So if you wake up every morning and you have a coffee and you love that coffee because it's just soothing to the soul, that chemical joy just going right down deep into your veins, that you could actually stack something on top of it. What if it was for you, if you've forgotten where your joy comes from, that for that 5 minutes that you drink that coffee, you say, until I begin this coffee and until I end, I'm going to connect with God today. And for some of you, that's going to feel weird because it's like anything new. Maybe it's like for those of you that are on a health journey, right? If you're trying to be fit, when you first start, you feel like you're a poser. You feel like you're trying to be healthy, but you're like, I'm not really, it's not my identity. I'm not a healthy person. I just need to be healthier. And as you do those things over a long enough time, you begin to say, no, this is who I am. And it's the same thing with God, that it might feel uncomfortable at first as you talk to him, as you go, this is weird talking, I don't see him, and this is weird reading about a God that, from a book 2,000 years ago, or whatever it is, and yet there's something to be said as you connect to this God over and over. If you begin to you put in the work and you stack this habit in the morning or whatever fits, that you begin to realize, oh, wait a sec, this is who I am. This is who I am. I'm a child of God. I'm actually created for purpose. I'm actually created not to be someone who's stuck in the mud, to be stuck in the darkness, not to live in resentment, not to live in just a lack of joy. I can actually walk in joy. So I want to challenge you to, whatever it is for you, if you've forgotten where your joy comes from, maybe for you today, it's just saying, I'm going to decide to make this a priority in my life. Maybe it starts with 5 minutes. Maybe it starts with 5 minutes a day, or maybe it's, I'm going to read this reading plan from the YouVersion Bible app, really easy. That's a few minutes. I'm going to start. And as you do, it's going to begin to snowball into you actually experiencing a catalytic joy. And so I want to challenge you today to these 3 things. Would you consider the source? Just consider it. Think about it today as you're driving home. Begin to think, where is it that I'm actually finding my joy from? Where is it that I receive my joy from? Is it a who or is it a what? And if you find yourself living in the what world and you know it's not working, maybe it needs to be a who. And then the question is, what's your priority when it comes to the who's? Is it God, others, and self? And I want to challenge you to consider that as an option. If joy isn't working for you, try something new. It's insane if you're just doing the same thing over and over again. So begin to think, maybe there's something to be said about this. Maybe I need to consider God again. Maybe I need to connect with him, serve others, and then myself. And then the last thing is to consider putting in the work. Make a decision that today I want to begin this journey. I'm going to make a decision today in my heart, and then I'm going to begin to put in the work. And as you do, I believe there's a catalytic joy that you'll begin to experience in a new way. Let's pray together. God, I just thank you for this church family today. And just honestly for such a simple reminder, God, of where we find our joy. And I'm just keenly aware, God, of a room this size and those that maybe would be watching online, that there's some that are here today or some that are watching that have literally tried everything to be happy, to find joy, and are really frustrated. God, maybe even those that are thinking about giving up because it just seems like there's nothing worth living for. So God, I just want to recognize this moment as sometimes it takes the darkness to actually reveal that we need something new. We need light. Because your word promises actually that when we begin down this journey that we'll shine like stars in the sky, that this is the promise that comes out of this passage. So God, for anyone who's here today who feels like they've literally lost hope, they don't know where to find their joy, God, I pray that today you would implant something deep in their heart. God, that there would be almost this sense that you're just right next to them because you are. God, they would sense this prompting, this movement in their heart that they just need to consider something they've never considered before. Not a sales pitch, not anything, but just a relationship with you. And God, I also pray for those that are here who, the reality is they've been in this a long time, but they've actually lost their joy too. They've forgotten where it came from. God, I pray for just a new sense, a new desire, a new passion, God, to just prioritize you again, that they would find ways to begin the process of reconnecting with you. God, that they would begin to re-engage others as a result of that. And as a result, they'd be a better dad and a better son and a better employee, God, a better contributor to this world, that there would be a better world because we simply understood where our joy came from. It comes from you, the maker of the heavens and the earth. And so, God, in this moment, I pray for anyone who's here who needs that. God, I pray that you would be that catalytic joy. And as we lean into you, would you transform us? That we wouldn't settle for the immediate. We wouldn't settle for a chemical. We wouldn't settle for a circumstantial. That even in the middle of bad circumstances, God, that we would choose joy. We would choose you. And as a result, we would be able to impact our world. The world would be better. Our families would be better. Our lives would be better. Our kids would be better. Our future would be better. The generations to come would be better because we're connected to you. So God, this is my prayer, and I pray it in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. So I want to bless you before you go with a simple truth. That if anybody tells you that you can't find joy, or if anybody's trying to sell you joy that looks like what we've talked about today, to consider the source, to consider your priorities, and to consider putting in the work that maybe you haven't before. And as you do, my hope is that you would experience a catalytic joy that changes you from the inside out. So I bless you with that amazing truth. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.